Okay.
All right, this is the Lunenburg Water District Commissioners meeting, April 27th, 2022. This meeting being recorded for rebroadcast over Lunenburg Public Access. We're going to review and sign the warrants. Get another UV light, Fran?
Just bulbs. Bulbs. Sun Hill rotate.
So they wear out over time?
Yes, they have a certain lifespan, how many hours they can operate. Someday when we paint the Chase Road tank, I want to add another UV light system to that tank as well.
Can we make that part of the bid when we do that?
Yes. That's where we were talking with Steve Powell about getting a little piece of land
Oh, here we go.
to put up just a little brick building to house the.
You might want to come up and use it as a tanning light, you know.
Yeah, you'll be blind if you look at it. So not a good idea.
What's the boarding and Reading corrosion control?
Sodium hydroxide.
Okay.
Okay, when I get those, I'll give you that one. And then while we're reviewing the minutes, if people that are here for representing Hickory Hills Landowners Association, if you want to come up, we'll continue our discussion regarding the Hickory Hills well.
Hello.
Hi. So I know they were pretty big at the planning board on this, so just if you would just state your name for the record and who you're representing, and then we'll
Yep.
We'll go
I
from
am
there.
Paula Bertram, president of the Hickory Hills Landowners Corporation.
John Fortune, 50 Hemlock Drive, also of Hickory Hills Landowners.
great. All right, so
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you were. Christie's our clerk treasurer, I'm Mark Burch, I'm the chairman of the Board of
Yes, of
Commissioners,
course.
Matt
Yes, you're
Woodward's the commissioner, and Fran McNamara, the water superintendent. So we had a pretty good meeting the last time, and I thought we came to a pretty good end resolution. I don't know if John had brought that to the board, or if you had a board meeting since to
Yes.
discuss, and if you have any input regarding that matter.
So I thought we had a very good meeting last time. I thought it was open, good discussion. We went back and forth. You know, I felt pretty comfortable with bringing the information to the board of directors and have some discussion with them. Since then, I will tell you that I'm a little bit disappointed in some of the other things that happened since that meeting, and that is getting the town warrant and finding that there were discussions about the well in that warrant that didn't come up here at the meeting at all. So that was disappointing. I was trying to be open and honest from my standpoint, and I felt like, again, something was being done behind the scenes, and had to find out myself about it. So that's disappointing. So I would prefer, if we're gonna have discussion, that everything is open, everything's honest, we get things out on the table, or this is never gonna work.
Right, so since that meeting, it was after that meeting that we went to the planning board. I know that Fran had been working with, well, actually Fran hadn't been working with, we had a hydrogeologist and Adam Burney working on trying to clean up our Zone 2 and some of our bylaws pertaining to the Zone 2. And I wasn't 100% aware of that until I went to the planning board meeting the other night. And some of the issues and concerns with that. So, had we known that it was gonna affect, because the main reason the Zone 2 is changing is because of the Lancaster Ave wells. We had not even considered what the bylaw changes would be doing to pre-existing Zone 2s and Zone 1s.
We're
Well,
particularly
it's a one.
concerned with the zone one.
Right.
Yeah, zone 1.
Right. So while we're on that subject, we've discussed it, we've sent and we've gotten responses from DEP. If you want, regarding, here's some copies of the stuff, the responses we got regarding the bylaw changes that we have from DEP. We can go over them pretty quick here. So DEP states that the bylaw cannot allow any new activities in a Zone 1. Okay?
But then the second bullet, the zone one is limited to water supply operation activities. Is problematic.
If you have a pre-existing activity in the Zone 1,
Then there's,
then the zone law, then it should just state, limited to water supply operation activities. The pre-existing condition, the understanding I have through Adam, and he's supposed to get town council on this, and what we have here is any pre-existing conditions are continued and allowed to continue.
but I just want to be clear, that's not what this says.
We'll
This
read the
says-
next line.
Okay. So why, I guess my question then is, since the only well in the town of Lunenburg currently is the Hickory Hills well, why remove the boating and fishing from our existing bylaw? If in fact they still remain, what does the water district gain by removing them from the bylaw?
This is, and again, it's not coming from the district, this is coming from the hydrogeologist that worked together with Adam Burney, and the hydrogeologist works with DEP on doing these. So, we're going off the recommendation of the planning coordinator and the hydrogeologist. So, if Adam is telling us that this is not gonna change any pre-existing use, then I'm not inclined to change what's gonna go to town meeting. If somebody wants to change it at town meeting, then, and feels that the interpretation that we have on our end is improper, then I encourage anybody to do that.
All right, I would look at the third bullet up. If you can limit boating to non-motorized boating, that would be ideal. If not, maybe you can post signs so people know to avoid the area if they are in a
Right, so,
motorboat.
and that's a suggestion, and it still doesn't say that it's gonna post signs and eliminate people using that area.
So these are suggestions, as you just pointed out. All of these bullets are suggested, and the only suggested wording in the bylaw is the zone one is limited to water supply operation activities.
Correct.
That is problematic.
Okay?
I agree.
Yep, and again, that's why if it.
Because these are suggestions, these are not the bylaw. And the
Right.
bylaw is open to interpretation by the zoning official that's currently holds the position.
Right.
And if the
Correct.
zoning official looks at the bylaw and says, hey, no, you've got to post this against boating, then we're gonna have to do that and then fight with either through the zoning board of appeals or through a court.
Yep.
So,
I agree. I think that should be changed to something other than that
Yeah.
word. I don't like it either.
I don't know, because I'm hearing different interpretations, so if you want to make a suggestion, Matt, as to if we should act on the wording now,
I think we should. I think
Is it too far in the town's process?
well, that's what
I don't think we can change it, so that's why I feel
yes,
it has.
yes, you can.
We
The
can-
water
okay.
district,
Well, we can amend it when we propose
You
it.
can,
on the floor.
you can
Okay.
tell the town moderator ahead of time that you're gonna propose an amendment, and when you read the motion, you include the amendment.
So,
It has to be approved by the town moderator, but he will allow you to amend it on the floor.
The only question I have, we are not required to have this to pass. We are required to ask the town,
to pass it,
request that the
Town
town pass
passes.
this thing.
right.
So what is in that thing is what we're supposed to be requesting. So
And
I'm
that-
not sure we should be saying,
That, I
I
agree.
think someone else should say it, because I'm not opposed to it. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
I never looked at Hickory Hills. When this thing all came up, I was looking at Lancaster Ave, there's no boat, there's nothing. Keating's is none of that. I didn't even think of Hickory Hills, because we don't really think of Hickory Hills as an active thing, but, you know,
I
when you
do.
brought it up, I'm like, yeah,
I do.
yeah.
We
So, I mean,
it's my
yeah,
We don't look at it as an active well site right now.
yeah, so, but I definitely agree, you know, that
Yeah.
it was overlooked.
I don't know, we'll have to figure out the proper way to do it, but I'm with you, I don't like that just,
I agree with your side of it, but I think it needs to come from the public rather than from the district, the change on this, because I agree with Fran, we're kind of, this came from DEP originally. So
Yep.
DEP, who's our regulatory body, a hydrogeologist and, you know, your planning coordinator. So, again, Fran says we don't need this to pass. It's up to the community to, if they want to pass it and or change it and modify it.
All right, well, just to put everything open and on the table, we will be
I would
not
expect it.
We-
okay with
be there.
this.
I would expect it.
And we will be either proposing an
if you-
amendment or not to pass it.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. So is there any other, while we're on this, do we want to, as
Yes.
far as Hickory Hills goes,
Yes.
Talk more
the
about the
zone.
bylaw.
We want to talk about the zone one, and I'm
Zone
going to
one,
let John
yep.
talk about that.
Exactly. So this is what you have proposed as your zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, right? That's just a blow up of your map.
Yep.
I got the other full
Yep.
map if you want to see that. So this is the lake area, and there's actually private property over on this side as well that your zone 1 goes into. So even if we have a lake restriction, or I'm sorry, a lake easement, if you will, if zone 1 doesn't continue into the lake, it continues into this property.
Right,
And-
which we have the easement on.
No, you have the easement on the Woodlands property.
Oh, yes.
You don't have the easement on the property that's across the cove.
Crossed off, yeah.
Dutton's property.
We will waive requirement for that. DEP waived that because the zone 2 doesn't even cross the lake and hit that. So
Right.
they waived that. I actually have a letter.
Now,
from-
what about control of the area under the lake? Because you don't control the lake.
Right,
So you don't control the land under the lake.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
No.
And right now, you have no easements or whatever. The only easements you have is on the Woodlands property.
Correct.
Up into the high water mark at the lake. That's the only easement that you have, because Hickory Hills hasn't signed one with you.
Oh, true, right.
So there is no easement. So this map, in fact, is incorrect. Because zone 1, as it exists today, is not like this.
Well, I don't understand why.
Well, because 310 CMR 22.21, which John pointed out to me tonight,
Which says-
requires,
That thing you have from DEP says, do not look at that.
no, this is the current regulations, but it says
Okay.
that the zone 1 of the proposed well field, or spring is owned or controlled by the supplier of the water. That's a restriction. And the original zone 1 for the well was only on land, as you stated at the planning board meeting. This zone 1 is not only on land, and we're pointing out that you do not own or control that zone 1.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So when we go forward and start talking about what we do with this well, that would be one of our requirements from DEP that says, okay, we understand you don't own and you're not gonna get any ownership or buy-in to control any portion of the water. So does it make sense to go forward with this or not? Because you're never gonna get this.
We own the property where the well sits.
No, you have
No,
to.
No,
easement.
you have an easement.
From
Easement?
the Woodlands, yeah. We actually have the easement from, I think his name is Michael Kenny, before the Woodlands was there.
Yeah, before it was the Woodlands, the original,
well,
whoever the
the
original guy
developer,
was.
the
Yeah, original
developer.
developer.
Yeah,
That
he
was
was the
founded in
developer.
85 before there was any pond.
Kevin somebody,
Right.
Micah Kelly.
1980.
So yeah, so the 400-foot radius is, that's just a stamp there. So that's never gonna change, even though we can't
But it has
control
a,
the-
but it has a
Right.
stamp and it has a whole bunch of requirements that go with that stamp, right?
But-
There are
but they're all-
restrictions.
Yeah, but they're all pre-existing things that doesn't matter. So that is never gonna leave. That
It may
400
not
foot
matter
radius is never gonna
today,
leave.
it may not matter to you, it's gonna matter sometime, and I just don't know when that is, right?
Okay.
Right, because we all know the regulations change, and although there may be pre-existing conditions that go along, but if for some reason somebody dumps oil out here or whatever, or their gas tank leaks or falls out of their boat, and all of a sudden that starts leaching into the well, people are gonna, it's gonna matter, right? So,
All that's impossible, but yeah.
No, it's not
Yeah, it is,
impossible.
because the gas and oil is gonna rise to the top of the water, and it's gonna evaporate to the air. It's never gonna go to the, penetrate through the water, never.
okay, well, that's good to know.
But our point is, the
Right.
original Zone Well 1 for this well, when the well 1 was drilled and the monitoring wells were
Yep.
put in, was very different than this Zone 1.
No, it's not. Exact 400-foot radius. Always was a 400-foot, every well.
I thought you said it was
Massachusetts-
only on land. I thought that's what you said at the planning board.
But there is a radius around it. We were only required to have an easement for the land area,
Not the lake.
not the lake. And there was that little piece which I.
So you
left-
have a waiver from DEP on this groundwater supply protection requirement, which is that you own or control that area?
They didn't force us to control the lake. There was just a little piece on the other side, which.
It was just the land, it didn't force
Yeah, it was just
control
land
over the
area, no,
body of
nothing on the
water
lake.
itself.
Okay, so moving forward, any agreement that we do come to on the study will include that verbiage.
Right,
We don't own, that we don't
That
own,
the-
well, we'll have to get some clarification on what this all means, because this
Yeah,
is,
'cause
this
this-
is,
yeah,
this is
I agree.
a new concept
I agree.
For all of us.
that I don't, you know, it was,
But I think when we discussed last time, we talked to the engineer from Ty and Bond, brought up the fact that DEP would want to be involved, because there is water, you know, within whatever, 30
Within-
feet of the
within-
well or something like that anyways.
yeah.
And so I'm believing that DEP gets involved, and we simply want, you know, something in writing from DEP that says, for now and forever, this, you know, the zone one.
The
will-
water district does not have to own or control the lake.
Yeah.
The lake-
Don't
the lake
have any control or,
portion.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a portion of it.
There can easily be
Or-
something
or
that would
actually-
probably be part of the, if it says, where it's the issue that you're bringing up now, I would 100% think that it's gonna be part of whatever we study.
Right, exactly. So, and I think that, again, it would be beyond the existing easement. You won't have any control beyond the existing easement.
Right. If there was
Which
a-
is on the land.
If there was any kind of an issue with when we put this in, I would have thought DEP would not allow us to put
I
it.
agree, yeah. But
So,
I don't know.
But I agree with you, some type of
I was pretty young in
clarification.
85.
Yeah, but some type of clarification on the things that you're talking about, the actual body of water and where the body of water lays compared to the land. I 100% agree that as part of the study, we should definitely make sure that DEP is involved and we get clarification on who owns and is responsible and controls and
And before
so
you
forth.
get into the study, personally, I would recommend that you do that first, because you don't want to spend $100,000 on a study if DEP is going to come back and say, you have to own or control that section of the lake and there have to be restrictions, because then we're at an
Then
impasse.
you're all.
Right, well, that would probably be one of the
Yeah.
first things that we would
Right.
have to do.
Yeah.
Right, you don't want to spend
Oh,
all
absolutely.
that money and it doesn't make any sense.
Yep. So clarification needed on ownership of land underneath the body of water.
No, control of
Yeah.
the land under the body of
Control-
water, the control of
control.
zone 1,
Control of zone one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beyond the existing easement.
Yep.
yep.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's
are
pretty
we,
good. So that's good.
we're good on that
That's a
side?
good start.
Okay.
That's a good start. Look at us, we're making progress.
Yeah, so then what else have you,
So the other things we talked about is this, any study done to approve, you know, the quality and quantity of the water must include, any of the pumping, so whatever pumping is done of the well to do any of the testing, how it affects the water level of the lake, how it affects.
I
the lake
agree,
itself, right?
that's definitely,
Yep.
Yep.
So that's, you know, important for us.
And before we go through all these, I just want to make clear that we are representing the board. Any agreement we have to bring back to the board, and they would
Yep.
all have to
Right.
vote for it. So we are discussing, but we don't have ultimate authority to enter into an
no,
agreement.
that's fine, that's,
Okay.
trying to get all the information out there.
Yeah.
That's why we're trying to do it this way, so everybody's on the same page and
Yeah.
there's no surprises and, you know, there's nothing that comes up at the 11th hour of like, oh, we didn't know about
You
this.
have,
Yeah, like
Yeah,
in the last
yeah,
2 weeks.
like Monday.
do you have a copy of bullet points on things that you might be able to give us or something? we can make-
not that I can- not that I can
Mine
give,
has
but we
got
can
notes
send them to
over,
you.
I
Yeah.
can send them to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next thing that would be important to us is the effects, if any, of removing the PFAS or manganese or iron or any other contaminants or minerals in the well, does it affect the quality of the water and of the lake in any way?
And we would want to know where they're going to be disposed of and ensure
Yeah,
that the lake
yeah.
is not going to be contaminated.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually my third one. Solution, whatever the solution is, did you come up with to do whatever filtering or whatever that might need to be done in that water? For the water of that well. Including removing the PFAS or manganese or iron or any other contaminants. All of it has to be moved off-site, away from any of the watershed.
Out of the watershed,
Out of
which
the
is very
watershed.
large, just,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's defined and delineated or whatever, and I
Yep,
think,
no, I would agree
what we
with-
talked about the other day is that, if it's in Buffalo, it's certainly gonna be far enough away, so, whatever, but that's, so in other words, no back flushing or anything like that, onto the property.
Well, typically they
Depending.
back flush into a tank, and then the tank is pumped out and.
Depending
as long
upon
as
the
it's
pro,
contained,
depending
but you
upon the
just don't want it in the
process.
lake.
I mean,
Yeah,
I would agree, we don't wanna,
Yeah, we don't
take it out.
we don't wanna clean.
You don't take it from this hole and put it in this one,
Right.
right?
That's one of the things that always, because we looked at treating this well from 6 months after it started up, and that was always one of the difficult things, that there wasn't an area to backwash to. And the backwash, if you did backwash to that, say we had enough land there, if you did backwash, the iron and manganese would stay above, and you have to clean those out, and the water sinks back in and goes back. So the iron and manganese wouldn't go back to the lake anyway. But this is an issue for this because there's not enough room to do any of that. So.
Right.
So we always looked at different methods of treating it with limited backwash, where we would backwash into a truck and then ship it off to the Leominster treatment plant.
Yeah, and something like that would be fine.
Yep.
I just wanna be clear about that.
The other one that I have is we'd like to have the opportunity to review, comment, and agree on the scope of the study as it relates to the Hickory Hills Lake.
So the intention, and I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Fran, we feel that a long-term study is going to be better, because a short-term study will help us determine the PFAS, but it won't help us with exactly what you
The
said.
minerals and-
The amount of water that you're pumping out of it.
The long-term effects
The
of the
long-term
pumping.
effects of
Yeah.
pumping,
Yeah.
and also, so I think a longer study, a pilot program is going to be better for both of the things that we're trying to accomplish here.
We don't disagree with that, I'm just saying, when you go out to bid, or however you're gonna, I don't know what process you guys follow, whether you're gonna go out to bid, but before you do that, we'd like the opportunity to see the scope of work that you're recommending, in particular that it relates to the lake, what you guys need to do as far as contaminants, that's not
I think
outside of
that
our
we'll
scope.
probably have some workshops with either yourself or
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
so that we make sure we incorporate all of your concerns.
What are your concerns in
Well,
that aspect?
I would say you
We
stated
just
it.
outlined it,
stated
we just,
them,
yeah, we just
They
kinda
don't
went through
want
them.
contamination back into the lake.
Okay, but as
They don't want to adversely affect the water
Yeah.
levels in the lake, and they don't want whatever we're doing to adversely affect the lake. And then at the end of the day, what types of control is needed in the zone 1? Or
Right. What do you
definition of
require?
what zone, the
Right,
zone
no,
1
I understand.
control.
I understand. I understand all of those things. But you're talking about you want to be part or active in this process of what we decide to put in there for like a facility or.
No, just the scope of the study.
Just
the scope of the study.
as it relates to the effects on the lake.
Understood.
That's all we
Yeah.
care
Okay.
about.
That's where I
What
was-
you
yeah,
guys
that's where I was
do as
confused.
far as,
Yeah.
how you
Yeah,
move it or the
yeah, how you
plant
do
or
all that stuff,
whatever
yeah, I
is
don't care.
So
not us.
The way this would work is, whatever engineering firm we use would talk to us and set up a proposal. And that proposal would go to DEP for their approval on doing the test. So we'll just tie you guys to that proposal. So
Right.
it won't
Okay,
go
that's
to
it. That's what I'm asking
It'll
for.
go through
Right.
you guys and DEP, and then once we get approval, then we go out to bid.
Okay,
and then-
that's
then
exactly
off
what
we
we're
go.
asking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
And then this is just still a study, because we don't even know whether we can, what.
Financially put it on the.
How would we go about treating it? Because we don't even know how we would treat it yet.
Right.
And we
Right.
don't know anything about quantities and so forth, and how much we pump, and that's where the study comes into play.
Right.
So,
And I can tell you 36-foot towers are not gonna get
Yeah, no,
approved.
no,
we wouldn't
I'm not sure I shared that with
We
the
wouldn't
board.
even
No,
oppose.
no,
That
you
was,
didn't. That
that
came
was,
out out of nowhere.
No.
35 feet, okay?
Yeah, yeah. That was
No,
one of the
even when you said that, I'm
ideas
like,
and things
no, no.
They did in
Yeah,
Dudley, I
that
think
was-
they have
Yeah,
literally
that's,
towers
that
next
is
to the
not what
pump
would ever be.
that are 36 feet high.
Why?
That's,
But
they,
that was-
they had a large facility, they had a huge amount of gallons per minute that they
Well,
had.
they had a
This
million,
is-
1.2 million gallons.
Yeah,
This is
so twice.
0.74, not
Yeah,
quite,
seven.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right, so,
yeah.
Is, by the way, is .74, is that a major source of water? Hence, .72, I think is what this
0.72,
was,
yeah.
yeah. 0.72 million gallons, is that a
Yes.
major?
Yes.
Becomes a major well, it makes it a major well?
Oh, yeah, yeah, and then over 100,000 gallons per day.
Oh, the 100,000, I kept seeing 100,000, but that's what that means?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, then everything above 100,000 is, you must go through DEP.
Okay. Okay. All right, good.
And then, I think John mentioned this last time, we would want a legal agreement
Oh, right.
between the Lunenburg Water District and Hickory Hills Landowners, Inc.
We, did you?
I spoke to KP.
Yeah,
We can't do that. Oh, I'm sorry.
They recommend.
They recommended to us that that the water district cannot get into a legal agreement with residents, whether it doesn't matter whether you're incorporated or not, because we are obligated to the whole district, not, he said that's like the town allowing a small business who's a corporation to get away with something when all the other residents of the town are like, well, how come they can get away with it? So our legal counsel, from my brief conversation with them today, which he is available. He did say he is available if we had legal questions for him. He's available right now for us to call him. That he does not advise the water district to get into, and he said you can do a policy or something like that. He says, but as our legal counsel, he did not advise us to get into any type of legal agreement with residents of a town, because that is not the full 2,500 customers that we have.
it's not the full district.
It's not the full district. We're not getting into a legal agreement with our full district. He said he does not advise us getting into any type of legal agreement with a small group of residents of the district.
But it is our intention to work together to come to some sort of an agreement that works for both parties. And if we're doing a pilot for this, it doesn't mean anything beyond the pilot. If we come to a determination after the pilot of what we can and can't do, then I believe it's probably a whole nother discussion. Because if we try to pass something that adversely or goes against the feelings of the Lake Association, we've already seen it, it's not gonna happen.
Right.
So we're here to try to come to some sort of understanding so that we don't affect the lake and that we can utilize a resource that the water taker is paid for. And that's kind of, where we're at with it.
Well, then that raises more concerns for me for the study. When you say a long-term study, what period of time are you thinking? Because obviously weather conditions change, weather patterns change.
Yes,
and that's gonna have an impact potentially on the lake level. So-
It could, when, I think we're talking at least a year,
Yeah,
if not,
yeah. A year to 2 years
is what we're looking at. And they take into account, they're gonna look at, and I think a few of the things they talked about, rainfall, humidity, groundwater.
Evaporation.
They're gonna, that's up to the engineers. They know how to look at this stuff and forecast it out. So we can study PFAS in like 2 days. Or we can study it over a longer period of time, which I feel we're gonna get a better result from. So I think that having a long-term study, we should be able to determine a lot of that information based on rainfall, the test wells were this deep, and I'm not an engineer, but I'm sure that they're going to look at every aspect of how this affects the lake. Because if they don't answer your questions, then we're gonna have a nice study and we're not gonna do anything with it. So that's the way I look at it. I mean, we're sitting here, we want to know what your questions and concerns are, and we wanna answer them and address and come together with some type of a resolution so that, we can utilize that resource at some level.
So I'm curious, go ahead.
I guess that's
follow-up.
where I get concerned, is because when you say at some level.
I don't know what the level is till the study.
Well, no, I know that, but what I'm saying is that study may show that at this rate, there's no negative impact on the lake, but at this rate, there is a withdrawal of X amount of inches to the lake. My concern is that without that legal agreement, there is no, you can pump as much as you want. There's no stopping, and there's no control from the Hickory Hills side as to how much you can draw down the lake. And I understand the point of you don't want to get into a legal agreement with a small amount of residents, but we are 25% of your.
And it shows when it shows that, anytime we try to do anything to utilize the resource, we get stopped. So if we can't come to agreement, I'm sure we're gonna get stopped.
But again, I'm hearing that we can't come to an agreement, and that's my concern.
Well, because we haven't studied the information. I know
that, Mark. Mark, I guess I'm not making myself clear.
Yep.
I'm all for the study. I think that's fantastic.
Yep.
And I think the study will show that the well can be pumped at X rate and there will be no negative impact.
Yep.
But what I'm hearing is that there can be no agreement between Hickory Hills and the Water District, that you will not go beyond that rate.
All right, I understand your concern.
Mm-hmm.
In a reasonable human being talking to each other, why would we? What would be the advantage to the water department? I'm just throwing this out here.
So can I answer
Yes.
that? I'd love to answer that. Because when I sat here 2 weeks ago, there was a gentleman back here that could care less what Hickory Hills was doing. There was a gentleman that sat in that seat that could care less what Hickory Hills was doing or how it affected the lake or anything else, as long as the whole water district itself was taken care of. And those two people could be two of the three people that are on this commission
Next time.
next time. And that's the problem that we have.
Okay.
And they were very clear. And you were here. So
I understand
you're-
that,
yep.
but once again, I completely understand your side of the table. Look, I'm a Lunenburger too. I mean, we all are. I love Hickory Hills. I would never want to see that resource even diminished by 1%. It's awesome. It's one of the reasons why this is a great community. But I feel like it's a very, like, a lot of animosity when we would never do anything to deplete that. I just don't understand why. I mean, why would we go crank that well up and then like dump out the lake? It wouldn't be done.
Well, and there is no animosity. I will say, as John started this morning, I wasn't aware of the proposed restriction on boating and fishing in the Zone 1, and I will tell you that came as a complete surprise to me on Monday night, and I was not happy about it.
Right, but you realize.
So, and you guys have been working on these regulations, so that
Somebody here knew that it was in there.
I didn't. I just looked over because I wasn't thinking Hickory Hills. I was thinking of other sources, which we own all the land, and there's no boating and fishing. I didn't even.
But even in that description, there isn't a restriction on it.
No,
Okay.
there is.
No, there isn't, because it's a pre-existing. But
No,
needless
no,
to say,
no,
I understand,
and
Paul.
I disagree with that, Mike.
We've talked about this. I agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
I want that taken
Yeah,
out completely.
yeah.
So I don't want you to think like someone pulled a fast one here to try to slide that in.
That was
And
my
Mike,
mistake.
if it was you and Mark on this board in perpetuity,
Right.
then that's great.
Right.
But you're not.
I understand.
And as someone
I understand.
But as someone who has served on boards, the makeup of boards change
Sure.
greatly depending on who's sitting on that seat.
Understood.
And if we have three individuals sitting in these seats that could care less whether Hickory Hills dries up,
Okay.
we have no legal recourse to address that.
Right.
Unless we go to court and spend our homeowners' funds to fight it. And I don't want to be in that situation. And the only way to make sure that we don't end up in that situation is that we have an agreement that says if the lake goes down by more than 1 foot, we'll stop, or we will not exceed this rate, or whatever this study shows. I'm asking you to stand by whatever the study shows in an agreement that you will not go beyond to negatively impact the lake. That's it.
Right.
And if you guys aren't willing to do that, then we're not gonna get
My
moving
goodness,
forward
I
on
mean, we're
this.
totally willing to do that, but there's a certain, like I said, I can't enter a legal agreement to it, and I think that's understood by all.
Well, I
What
think
if it's
can't- I
proven
think-
that it
I think-
doesn't impact the lake
I
at
think-
all?
First of all, let me answer. I think can't
Do the study.
is, you know, we also have a lawyer, right? I think between two lawyers, they can come up with some wording that would actually work. However, you know, we're not there yet, so we gotta get there. But if we get through all this, we spend a lot of money and we can't get there, then we're gonna push to stop.
And we've spent this money.
Which is
and-
which is honestly.
And that's your risk, honestly.
That's our
That's your
risk.
So-
We're trying to do whatever we can to move forward, and work together to satisfy both of our needs.
So-
That's kind of where we're at here. I'm not trying to, and never intentionally try to slip anything by anybody. And I agree that, you know, if we were still here, Matt, myself, and our views on working together were here, then there probably would be no problem. But
Right.
as a board member, I mean, we're here to represent the district.
Right.
You are a big
Yep.
part of the district.
Yep.
So even when I might not agree with some things, I do what I'm supposed to as a commissioner. I'm
Yep,
still kind
yep.
of limited.
Yep.
There's decisions that we can't make without the district.
Right. So I have a question for you, and that is, and Fran just brought this up. All the other wells are on property that is owned by the water district or the town, I assume. Maybe it's just the water
It's the
district.
water
Just the water
district.
district.
Water district.
Has there been any work done to put a different well in a different aquifer on this side of the other side of the town or whatever, but on public land? Or on district land that the district is going to buy? So you can control it?
I think, Fran, I mean, we constantly are looking for additional resources and have things in mind, but when it's $2 or $3 million to develop a well,
But
it's a slow process.
is there grants or anything that might be available to that because of the problem that you're having with PFAS in this well, right?
I don't think it's for wells, it's just for
But-
treatment, right?
Yes, but I don't know any of this, but
Yep.
could, because this needs treatment, could you say, instead of treating this well, could we do another well?
Well, this well needs treatments and it doesn't meet the Zone 1 requirements that you have put on all water districts. Therefore, this is difficult for us to work with. Let's find another site that is better and either owned by the town or owned by the water district and maybe fund some of that. That's really my question.
It's definitely something we're looking
It's
at.
one-
Naturally, we gravitate to this that already has $2 to $3 million
Yep.
invested in it,
Yep.
and it's a dead resource.
And let's face it, I mean, when this was done, right, the person that did it, did it for financial reasons. The person that owned the Woodlands property did it so he didn't have to dig a whole bunch of wells, right? So there was money behind it, that's what happened.
They actually fought us on it. They wanted to build a 4-unit condo where that well site is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they were kind of fighting us on the well site.
Yeah.
And we did try to put a well in down the Cowdrey lot on 2A. It was not the same capacity as the Hickory Hills well. It was
I remember
probably the
that,
300
yeah.
gallon
Yeah.
mid-range. And we had to go to town meeting to, I think it was called Article 97, to let the town, to take it out
Of the,
of the conservation.
and
Oh, and make it water district
Just so that we
property?
could, no,
Oh.
just allow us to use it, so we would use it on town property.
Yeah.
And allow us to just put the wells in. And it was
that
actually,
didn't
the
pass,
plan
did it?
was, there's a little, wooded, highland and right across from Elmwood Road.
yep,
So the plan was to put submersible wells in and do a directional drill underneath the swamp and bring it up to that spot. So-
But the issue was, because I was there, is that you would have to control 400 feet of conservation land and recreational uses would be prohibited, just as they are in this, these
Walking, you could walk on it.
Yeah, you can walk on it and stuff, which is, you're not gonna develop it.
And those are
I'm
200-foot,
surprised.
50-foot rates, because that was a well field, so those are 250-foot rates. But still, same.
yes, you would have the restrictions, but they're restrictions that can be waived by DEP or reviewed by DEP, I think, under what we.
Yeah, they reviewed
One of the
stuff.
changes.
Like
Yeah.
one of the Hickory Hills well, the DEP reviewed the boat ramp and the boat dock that was at the
Yeah.
Hickory. They
At the
waived-
Woodlands-
they
Woodlands
waived- at
dock?
the Woodlands, yeah.
Yep.
They waived that, so there's no.
Do you know, when were those waivers, Fran?
1994.
And they don't expire? Because this goes back to our question about the control of the Zone
Right.
1. Because in looking at the regulations, because John did a lot of research today on the regulations, and it very clearly says that you have to own or control the land in the 400-foot radius.
Yeah.
Own or control?
Yes,
Own or
that's what it
control, yeah.
says, yeah. Is owned or controlled by the supplier of water. And that's where like, well, they don't, so how is this even?
Yeah, you don't either, right? So there's also some talk about, you know, turning on a well that hasn't been utilized for like 5 years.
Yeah, that's why we do sampling every couple of years.
Oh, do you? So you can keep
Yeah,
it.
we-
So you keep it, you keep it
Yeah,
going.
so it
Keep it
doesn't
going.
look stagnant.
Okay.
Yeah, once you go past that 5 years, it's an inactive well. You have to do all new pump tests and
Yeah.
when I was on the board in Townsend, that happened to one of their wells. I'm gonna make a copy of this letter. This is
Okay,
in
awesome.
regards to that little piece across. and-
Dutton's, yeah, that was Dutton's then, it was Dutton's back then,
Dutton's,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
And they waived that requirement of that land.
because they were trying to
Right.
build the house then, if I remember, I think I was on the Board of Health then, and they were trying to build the house, and they were trying to develop that piece, and that's when that all came up.
Maybe. It was it's kind of funny that they talk about that little piece
Yeah.
and not the lake.
Not the lake.
Not the lake.
That's where it's kind of
A great, it's a kind of a weird
All right,
area. My concern is, you know, you guys know that I've read the pump test report backwards and forwards, and it clearly states that the well pumping, the lake is affected by the pumping. And if I'm proven wrong, then I'm happy about that.
In other parts of that, it also talks about recharge and all
Right.
sorts of other things. And that's why, the way we look at it and the way you look at it, I understand it. If we actually had a study done and an engineer that could explain exactly
Yep, I
why
completely agree.
we are having conflicting views on it, then that would help. I applaud John for our last meeting for asking the engineer's opinion and being chastised for it, but the engineer's opinion was spot
Spot on.
on.
I thought so
Was
too.
what?
Was that, you know, he saw two things that really needed to be looked at.
Yep, and I
And in
agree.
order to do one, we needed to do the other.
Right. And he
So-
said what his big point was, and I thought this was great, is that DEP is gonna be involved whether you like it or not, because
Right.
you're taking surface water. And he said, so you have to have DEP involved, you know, or you're next to surface water, so you have to have them involved.
Yeah, so
Right.
And
given
he
that,
said,
and
you know,
given the
that'd be
questions
part of
we,
the study.
given that, and given the questions we now have about the Zone 1, I think that's the first.
Right.
That's
And-
the
Yeah.
first task.
The other thing is DEP regulates, I believe, what we can pump out of a well.
Yep.
DEP regulates what we can pump out of
Yes,
a well.
yep.
So when you're talking about an agreement, then, you know, knowing when we're looking at this whole scope, DEP is gonna be the one that would regulate, or be able to help us regulate
does mention
down
400 foot
or put
radius.
restrictions on when we can pump it
That we need to
according
control.
to lake levels. Coming from DEP might be the best form of an agreement we
Sure.
can get.
Yep.
Would that satisfy, I mean, if there was
That
some,
would certainly go a long way.
you know,
That would
like if you
certainly
had,
go a
if
long
there was a
way.
DEP
Because-
requirement that said, hey, if the lake level drops below this, you need to shut the pump off. It would
Yep.
be
Right,
natural.
so we already have water restrictions that we need to put in place based on stream flow.
Yep.
So, and that's not us, that's not
Right.
our ability to pump, that
Yep.
comes from DEP. So, you know, they may be able to,
Is that an open process when DEP's review, I mean, is it like I don't know, is it a public hearing process, is it just
For
DEP?
the restrictions?
Yeah,
DEP, they give you two options. One is to do by calendar, which is the May to September 30th,
yeah,
mandatory restrictions, or you can do by stream flow, which we have to watch the Pepperell.
Pepperell National
Yeah.
River, yeah.
Yes, in Pepperell, there's staff gauges, so we watch that for stream flow.
No, I meant when you go online, I
I see what
meant,
you're saying.
yeah, I meant when you go online and they have the pumping, they tell you what you can pump.
right.
Is that an open process or is that a closed process between the water district and DEP?
I'm not sure, I think there's a public comment section of it. So if
Okay,
we
that's my
went-
question,
If,
okay.
like, we went for an increase for the vegetable thing that we're.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
so we-
greenhouse,
The
yeah.
greenhouse, yeah, so we went for an increase in our permit for that, and they went in and reviewed it and looked at the data, what typical ones other ones use, and,
And then they solicited public comment because the town boards commented, I remember that.
so then if everything's okay with everybody, then they'll issue the, assuming we have the water.
Right.
To supply it.
So that's an opportunity for us to,
And I
Yeah.
believe
comment.
also if we work together with an engineering firm that's gonna do the study, what their recommendations are gonna be, and I believe we can work with them to tailor what we wanna send to DEP.
Yeah, that was the case when we did the
So-
dam overtopping, so.
Right, so I
we
would,
could-
I would think that's
to
gonna
that.
be our best route to an agreement versus a legal agreement between the district and the residents.
yeah, and that would, I think that would
I would think
work.
that would-
As
that
long
seems
as
reasonable, yeah.
we have involvement in that process, I
Right.
think that would work.
I
just
want
wanna point out
involvement
this
from
letter
both
that Fran
sides
just.
the whole way.
That Fran just gave us, and it says, if you read the third paragraph, it should also be noted that the Lunenburg Water Department has developed bylaws to protect this groundwater supply, and all land within said 400-foot radius will be subject to the Lunenburg Water District Aquifer Protection Bylaw. So, if this bylaw goes into effect,
Right.
we're not grandfathered. Very clearly,
Yeah.
very clear.
Well, we've developed the bylaws, but a pre-existing condition, according to Adam, again, I agree with what we already discussed and moving forward and how it needs to change, but it really can't, I don't agree that it could come from us. And I think that it was a pre-existing condition before that well went in, because
It's
I remember I
interesting.
was fishing right in that cove when the boathouse used to be
Yeah.
there as a kid.
Yeah, this is really interesting, because the last paragraph talks about this little piece. Because this little piece was within the 400 feet of the proposed well, but outside of the zone 2. It only talks about, at the last paragraph, it is therefore the opinion of the Central Regional Office that the Lunenburg Water District does not have to own or control the parcel of land in order to utilize Hickory Hills Lake site. But it doesn't say anything about not having to own the lake.
See, that's what's strange.
That's what's really weird.
That's why this makes me believe that there was something else.
Yeah,
That-
there's something's missing.
Something-
Something's
yeah.
missing in this
Yeah,
whole,
why are they bringing that piece up?
right, and not
And
the
not-
Well,
lake.
you must have, when that well came online originally, I mean, the one I was looking at today was the one of when, the restrictions and everything for putting in the Keating's well. So you must have somewhere the restrictions from DEP when you put the Hickory Hills Lake well online originally. There must be some restrictions that came from DEP at that point. And those are the ones I would think you would still follow.
All the letters that are here reference that the bylaw that was in place at that time was adequate for protecting that well. So they looked at all that stuff.
Is that still
instead of-
pretty much this bylaw that we have here that's, that we're trying to
It's been
change?
changed like 3 times
Okay,
probably
yeah.
since.
So we'd have to see that bylaw from that time frame.
Yes.
But just so that you guys are aware, this raises more concern about me about this bylaw passing.
Right. And that information for that well is not online anywhere, for the Hickory Hills well. The one from the Keatings, a lot of that information is online, but in whenever it was done, it may not have been
Yeah,
put online.
so just so, we found the well in 1985.
Okay.
It was December of 1985. And the actual well went into service, it was in 1995. So all these letters from 94 when we were getting the permits and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
So beyond the voting, do you have a concern about the bylaw change? I don't think there's any changes that
Yeah,
affect
yeah,
as far
actually, I
as.
don't have it with me, because I thought it was in the warrant, but it's not.
Yeah, not the whole thing.
Yeah, it just says to a handout.
Right there. Yeah, this is the,
There was something else too, it was the nature study.
right, so you had nature study with prior
Yeah.
DEP approval.
Yeah, this
voting session.
raised wooden walkways, foot, bicycle, and/or horse paths with prior DEP approval. Well, there are walkways, foot, bicycle paths that don't have DEP approval, so C is a concern to me. B is a concern, because we have outdoor recreation.
Right.
We don't have DEP approval, so B, C,
Yeah, but outdoor recreation's already in it. It's already.
with prior DEP
With DEP
approval.
oh, okay.
That's my
Right.
concern,
Right.
that underlined section. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so that might need to go too.
So B.
And the
C
removal of the boating and fishing,
is huge.
right?
Yeah.
You know,
So from the words, we want it to end at nature study, period, that it's allowed. C, I'm not okay with this, because I don't know if there are docks there. Are those considered raised wooden dock walkways?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And the words with prior DEP approval, and I do think there are bridges. I know there are by Bobby Turkington's. There's small
yeah,
wooden
yeah.
You
walking
want
bridges.
you
that
want
may be too
to
far.
not strike boating and fishing?
Yes, exactly. And take
You
out
want
which
to,
be allowed.
you want to leave